Do I have a story for you today? Since the dawn of time, humans have been a rowdy bunch. We've explored and conquered, and oh have we conquered. And we've conquered land through war and bloodshed, and just because you're 8 years old and in daycare doesn't mean that changes. This is a story about my daycare. This is a story of betrayal, power, politics, and sharp-pointed sticks. This is the story about the time my daycare went full Lord of the Flies. So I went to a daycare every day after school because my parents had to work. And this was a pretty big program. There must have been at least 60 or more kids that went to this daycare. And most of the time, we were pretty much left to our own devices. There was adult supervision, but pretty much all of the adults were college students just trying to vibe, so they didn't really get in our way. But one day they did. And that was where it all went wrong. It was May, so the weather was getting pretty good outside, so the supervisors of this daycare pulled everyone together and said, "Listen here, from 3 until 5, you kids are gonna play outside, and you're gonna like it." So that was a mistake. Our daycare had a pretty big property outside, and it had a pretty big park, and there was also a hill at the edge of the property that we weren't supposed to go behind. But since there weren't too many adults supervising us anyways, a bunch of us were like, frick it, we're 8, we ball. So we went behind the hill, and we saw a marsh. Like an actual microbiome marsh. Now we've got an older kid with us named Brandon, and he's 10 years old, so he's basically a god to us. And he steps up as our leader and he says, "This is gonna be our marsh kingdom." And just like that, no questions asked, we're like, all right, yeah, sounds good. And then he says, "Since I found this marsh, I'm gonna be the king. And if you wanna play in my kingdom, you have to do what I say." There are about 30 of us in total, and Brandon starts assigning us tasks. We start mobilizing pretty fast, I'm not gonna lie. And Brandon is pretty protective of his marsh kingdom, so he assigns some people to guard and patrol the marsh with sticks. He says, "Patrol my marsh, and in exchange, I'll give you land." And it was actually pretty cool, because what we did was we flattened reeds to make little rooms, because the clearings would be surrounded by other tall reeds, and then we put wood planks between those rooms to make a marsh city, and it went pretty hard, I'm not gonna lie. Now, being a guard wasn't the only job you could have. Some people were given the role of builder, or some people were given the role of chef. And what the chefs did were they collected leaves and flower buds and dug holes in the marsh floor to bring up the water, and they made soup. And I wish we could tell you that we didn't drink dirty marsh water, but at this point we were pretty into whatever we were doing, so yeah, no, we definitely drank it. At that point, it had been 3 weeks of non-stop marsh playing, and we started getting a little loopy. We were convinced that the soup was medicine, so everyone had to drink it as a rite of passage to earn their stay in the marsh. By now, we have our own currency, and it's rocks. Like, just straight up rocks. You could pretty much spend your rocks on whatever you wanted to. Like, you could buy more marsh soup to drink, or you could buy leaves to eat. 100% we had our own gambling ring. My job is inventory taker and armorer. So people keep dumping rocks into my marsh room, and you know, we're having our fun drinking marsh water, eating leaves, counting rocks, and then one day, Brandon comes up to me and he says, "There's a war brewing, and I need you to start arming my troops." So me hearing my king command me, I'm like, yeah, all right. So my job becomes me having to make rock slingshots. And I made the slingshots by tying rocks to the end of reeds, and dog, those things were pretty dangerous, okay? I'm not even kidding. There was a house nearby being built, and we were testing the slingshots, and we may or may not have broken a window or two. Building those slingshots? Another big mistake. At this point, there was some dissent growing in the population. Some people really didn't like the jobs they were given because they didn't earn as much as some of the other high-paying jobs. You know, like a builder didn't get as many rocks as a chef. So there was a class divide. There was a lower class, a middle class, and an upper class. And the people in these lower classes, they started getting a little antsy. They're not happy with how many rocks they have. So they start arming themselves. They start collecting sticks, slingshots, and whips from a nearby willow tree. And then things really escalated on this one day. this one day called the Shanking. One day, everyone is just minding their own business in Marsh Kingdom. And then out of nowhere, we hear a piercing cry echo into the air. We all rush over like, what happened? What happened? And we see this kid from the upper class, and he's bleeding out of his arm. And there's a sharpened stick on the ground beside him. We ask him what happened, and he says, someone assassinated me. I mean, we did everything we could for him. We gave him medicine, and it didn't work. In his kid mind, he thought he was dead. So we give him a proper burial ritual, even though he's still clearly alive and just sitting on the ground. Now, for the sake of continuity, Brandon is like, get out of here and never come back. But you are never telling anyone what happens in this marsh. I don't know how no one found out what we were doing at this point, but I guess whatever Brandon said to him really worked, because things kept going. Brandon comes up to me and he says, you know that kid who got shanked? Our side did that. And we did that to build up the tension, so I'm gonna need you to start making even more weapons. Basically, what this kid did was he masterminded a false flag attack so that the upper class would have a justifiable reason to go to war against the lower class. So I mean, this kid is 2 years older than me. I'm like, okay, more rock slingshots, got it. Now the next day at snack time, all we can talk about is the assassination. The kid was literally at the next table over from us, but we just pretended he was dead. So my friend Nicholas, he's the leader of the lower class, and he says, I've had it with this. Let's just revolt today. So we get to the swamp, we get in a line, 14 kids on each side, armed to the teeth with sticks, whips, and rock slingshots, and we just go at it. We just fight. There's actual blood being shed, people crying. I get stabbed in the stomach pretty bad, cut on the arm, like people are getting hurt. And eventually it gets so bad that the adults hear us and they just see children beating each other with sticks and whips and throwing rocks at each other. And they're like, oh no. So they come over, they force us inside, and they sit us all down, and they're like, you guys are never playing in that marsh again. And when we come back from our weekend, we're super curious to see what the Marsh Kingdom looks like, but it's not there. It got drained. They drained our Marsh Kingdom. As far as resolutions go, that was pretty much it. Everyone just kind of pretended it didn't happen. So we just went back to throwing pine cones at each other. Anyways, that was my Marsh Kingdom story. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.